friends, thanks for checking out my channel and this video. You're watching Paint and Draw with Tom, and I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered how Leonardo da Vinci actually achieved the level of success with his paintings that he was able to achieve, considering that he was living back in the high Renaissance period where you didn't have wonderful tools and resources like YouTube, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have a broad array of wonderful books that have been published by accomplished artists. So, how did he do this on a self taught basis? How did he become such a great draftsperson and painter? Well, the good news is that you can access his very own knowledge base and tips to become a better painter and draftsman for free. That's right, I said for free. I'm going to put a link right here and also down in the notes for this video where you can access a full copy in PDF format of A Treatise on Painting, which is the book that we're going to talk about today. So, A Treatise on Painting is not a book that was written by Leonardo da Vinci himself. It technically is a compilation of notes from his best classes that he shared with his students. These notes were pulled together by one of his mentees and friends who was a student of his for many years. Thankfully, he took the time and effort to do this because now we have access to all the knowledge that Leonardo da Vinci accumulated on his own as a self-taught painter and draftsman. So you could access all of that in the free version online, but I am going to reference about a dozen or so of my favorite quotes here from this abridged copy, which I acquired at a really, really inexpensive cost. I'll put a link to the Amazon page where I was able to actually purchase this copy for you in the notes as well. And we'll go through about a dozen or so of my favorite quotes today, just to give you a flavor for what this book is all about. And then in future videos, I will take deeper dives into some of the concepts that Leonardo da Vinci taught his pupils. And I'll explain it in modern terms in a simple way, probably on a whiteboard, like I have for some of my past videos on the channel. So anyway, let's go ahead and go through some of my favorite quotes from Leonardo da Vinci's A Treatise on Painting. All right, so here we are. We're going to take a quick skim through A Treatise on Painting. And once again, this is a book that was actually a compilation of lessons that were delivered by Leonardo da Vinci based upon the notes of one of his students. Now, it's organized by chapter in a nice orderly fashion. There's, a good preface which describes the time period that Leonardo da Vinci lived in. And this is broken out into really, really short chapters, which are really just a paragraph or a few paragraphs long each. He does spend a lot of time on anatomy and figure drawing, as you would expect, based upon what we've seen amongst Leonardo da Vinci's works. However, it does get into the realm of landscape painting, which is the area of interest that I tend to focus on myself as a painter. So you can see I've used the note-taking method that is prescribed by Tim Sanders in his book, Love is the Killer App, which I summarized on the channel here a while back. And that includes a couple of different ways of taking shorthand notes. So there's lots of dog ears. You're going to see that I reference different sections where quotes jumped out at me because I want to be able to quickly refer back to them in the future. Here's an example of what I thought was an important insight, one of which I have some questions about. So I put a question mark and a couple of exclamation points alongside of the bracket here, where he says, when you draw from relievos, tinge your paper of some darkish demi-tint. And after you have made your outline, put the darkest shadows and last of all, the principal lights, but sparingly. especially the smaller ones, because those are easily lost to the eye at a very moderate distance. So there's a lot said there in that sentence, and a lot can be left open to interpretation. It jumps out at you right away because he basically outlines the ordering rules that you would normally hear prescribed by instructors that teach oil painting or drawing or working in charcoals. We start with the shadow patterns and then move gradually to the lighter areas of the scene that we're painting. And he also references some other things there, like tinting the paper. And there's varying opinions on that. But there's tons of information here, and you can see my notes throughout. And once again, I'll take deeper dives into some of these concepts in the future. I'm just going to go through and share with you a couple of my favorite quotes. By the way, just to give you some insight into my note-taking format, which again was adapted by the format or the structure for taking notes within books that you're reading by Tim Sanders in his book, Love is the Killer App. I put a little box with quotation marks next to it to indicate that that might be a quote that I intend to use in the future. Now, here we go. In this chapter here entitled How to Detach and Bring Forward Figures Out of Their Background, he states, if your figure be dark, place it on a light background. If it be light, upon a dark background. And if it be partly light and partly dark, as is generally the case, contrive that the dark part of the figure be upon the light part of the ground, and the light side of it against the dark. So it seems to me what he's saying there is even if the actual scene in front of you doesn't present the opportunity to actually emphasize contrast between light and dark to your advantage, go ahead and make it up. If there's areas where part of the figure is in shadow and is particularly dark, you may use that as an opportunity to exaggerate the lightness or the darkness in the shapes that are alongside of that particular area to draw the figure forward. And that is a common practice in painting and draftsmanship, which is really, really helpful. So we'll go ahead and we'll do another 10 or so of these, but you can see the notes and my emphasis on different areas of the book. It's quite dense. There's a lot that I highlighted, a lot that I found insightful and helpful. Here on the topic of reverberation, which is a subject that is really, really interesting to me for a number of reasons. At a cursory glance, I would tend to think of this as vibration, the vibration of light, like what we'll see in certain types of paintings, like, for example, Impressionism, where you might see contrasting colors put alongside of each other in relatively high saturation in some cases, with the intention of creating vibration within the eye or brain of the viewer. I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to here, but that's what made this quote jump out at me. In this chapter, where he says of reverberation, reverberations are produced by all bodies of a bright nature that have a smooth and tolerably hard surface, which, repelling the light it receives, makes it rebound like a football against the first object opposed to it. So I think what he's really referencing here in actuality is the intensity of light, the intensity of highlights in a scene. And he goes on to explain a couple of different things, a couple of different ways where you can incorporate those highlights into a scene to elevate your painting or drawing. I did note that he references football. Now, I'm 100% sure he wasn't referencing American football, but I was surprised a little bit that he makes this reference, because I wasn't sure whether or not soccer, as we call it in the United States, or football, as it's called around the rest of the world, was actually something that had been invented during his time, but I guess it may have been. And I wrote a little series of question marks here and put a little rectangle around that with the intention of researching that further. Once again, drawing off of the note-taking concepts that are outlined in Tim Sanders' Love is the Killer app. Here's another quote in the section right at the beginning where it mentions in the section of the reflected lights which surround the shadows. He mentions the reflected lights which strike upon the midst of shadows will brighten up or lessen their obscurity in proportion to the strength of those lights and their proximity to those shadows. Many painters neglect this observation while others tend to deduce their practice from it. So, kind of an interesting thing to think about there. Obviously, a lot of references to general relativity within the confines of the world of painting here. Here's an interesting one, color theory 101. I remember, I believe maybe my mom teaching me this a long time ago. I don't think she was quoting this book, but maybe it was from an art class that she had taken. In the section where it says, what surface is best calculated to receive most colors? We see here it's stated that white is more capable of receiving all sorts of colors than the surface of any body whatever. That is not transparent. So white is more capable of receiving all sorts of colors than any surface of any body whatever that is not transparent. To prove it, we shall say that any void space is capable of receiving what another space not void cannot receive. In the same manner, a white surface, like a void space, being destitute of any color, will be the fittest to receive such that are conveyed to it from any other enlightened body, and will participate more of the color than black can do, which latter, like a broken vessel, is not able to contain anything. So he's creating some comparisons of different scenarios here. But I think what he's stating is that a white surface is more likely to take on the attributes, the color attributes, the hues, if you will, of the light that's reflecting off of it. And that could be the result of a direct light source or a secondary reflected light that's bouncing off of another surface. Let's say, like a stained glass window, for example. And I think this concept is extraordinarily fascinating. And you could apply that to a lot of different scenarios, not just painting and drawing, but other scenarios as well. All right, here we go. In this section of the colors produced by the mixture of other colors called secondary colors, here he goes on to say the first of all simple colors is white, though philosophers will not acknowledge either white or black to be colors, because the first is the cause or the receiver of the colors, and the other totally deprived of them, meaning black. But as painters cannot do without either, we shall place them among the others, and according to this ordering of things, white will be first, yellow will be second, green the third, blue the fourth, red the fifth, and black the sixth. We shall set down white for the representative of light, without which no color can be seen, yellow for the earth, green for water, blue for air, red for fire, and black for total darkness. So you kind of get an indication of what his simple palette might have been. In his time, he very well may have incorporated different colors on his palette, but that seems to be an indication of what his palette will be. It'll also be an indication of what his philosophies around color theory were kind of rooted within, incorporating white and black in a time where I believe painters sometimes were neglecting those colors, or at least not considering them to be colors at all. In addition to that, it's worth noting that he references throughout the book occasional lessons or thought processes that he follows as it relates to the creation of his colors. Remember, this is a time where painters like him were actually using compounds to create their paint. So actually taking pigments from whatever source they were able to gather them from, sometimes gathering themselves or acquiring them, and then using binders to actually create paints from scratch. So he not only was a wonderful painter, but he also was somebody that was well versed in color theory and color mixing. All right, there's a lot more here. Here's an example of the type of thing that I might demonstrate in a future video. This little picture here, And we'll go into a deeper dive at a later time. Here's another example here as well. I'm not sure if I fully understand his general remarks on colors yet, so I'm going to revisit that a couple times before I try to explain it. This one here, if you look at my notes, it's kind of mind blowing to me. He's describing really the use of multiple types of perspective, including aerial perspective in this particular passage to help create depth within your paintings. And that is definitely something that I will probably demonstrate on a whiteboard at a future date for you. Maybe one or two more quotes before we conclude. Here, under this section or this chapter called Gradation in Painting, he goes to say, what is fine is not always beautiful and good. That alone says a lot, I believe. So again, what is fine is not always beautiful and good. I address this to such painters that are so attached to the beauty of colors that they regret being obliged to give them almost imperceptible shadows, not considering the beautiful relief of figures acquired by a proper gradation and strength of shadows. Such persons may be compared to those speakers who in conversation make use of many fine words without meaning, which altogether scarcely form one good sentence. So, he's picking on people that maybe are a little wordy, that say a lot of things that have no meaning to kind of create the visual imagery here. But there are painters, and heck, I've been guilty of this thousands of times, who maybe try to do too much with an image and neglect the important things, like, for example, your shadow shapes and contrast, obviously. And many folks will actually consider those to be of higher importance than the actual colors used. All right. So here we go. What else will we talk about here? Well, he does a nice job of explaining and re-explaining aerial perspective and the impact of the atmosphere on color, and not only just color, but all the things that we normally consider as landscape painters. The actual desaturation of color off in the horizon and why that actually works that way, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and find one more quote to share with you here as we flip through our very abbreviated overview of A Treatise on Painting. And here we go. I think this is interesting. In this section here, in this chapter named Small Figures Ought Not to Be Too Much Finished, this also speaks to the effort to build depth in a painting and some other aspects of painting which are really, really important. And again, just stunning to me that he's thought this through based upon his own learning as a self-taught painter in the Renaissance period. He goes to say, objects appear smaller than they really are when they are distant from the eye. And because there is a great deal of air interposed, which weakens the appearance of forms, and by a natural consequence prevents our seeing distinctly the minute parts of such objects, it behooves the painter, therefore, to touch those parts slightly and in an unfinished manner. Otherwise, it would be against the effect of nature, whom he has chosen for his guide. For as we said before, objects appear small on account of their great distance from the eye. That distance includes a great quantity of air, which, forming a dense body, obstructs the light and prevents our seeing of the minute parts of the object. So this might be intuitive for most viewers on the channel who maybe have been painting and drawing for a while. As things are further away, we lose details. And that's why you see, in many instances, broken lines. You see far less detail. If you're rendering a tree off in the distance, you're not going to be able to make out the individual foliage or even branches in some instances, as compared to when that same tree might be a little bit closer in the foreground. Same goes for the rendering of people in a scene as well. Somebody far off in the distance, you might not be able to make out what type of shirt they're wearing, the buttons on their shirt. You might not be able to see their eyes as clearly, or the deep shadows underneath their nose or chin like you would if they were up close. So he's saying all of that in this very brief paragraph here, which I think is just wonderful, and it's emblematic of the quality of the thoughts that are shared within this book. So hopefully you found this brief walkthrough of a treatise on painting to be helpful and interesting. Remember, you can get a full version, a full copy for free at the link provided down below in the show notes. In addition to that, if you decide you want to acquire this abridged copy that I have, I'll put the link to the Amazon page that is available to you to purchase through as well. I'm not an affiliate. I don't get anything off of it. My experience was that it was delivered when they said it would in good condition, and it is a pretty good copy. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're still with us, consider liking this video or sharing with a friend who might enjoy this content. Also, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. That'll help me grow the channel further. I enjoy making these videos. They help me learn. In addition to that, I like the idea of being able to share information and insights with folks that are interested in growing as creatives, as painters and draftspeople as well. So once again, thanks for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you stay well, and hope to see you again next time.